Welcome to the Big Time Thinking Podcast. This content is brought to you by taking thousands of arrows right in the back and doing something about it. Quit winking at girls in the dark.
Get them to sign on the line which is dotted.
And get ready to scale your sales, your dealership, your business, your life, your family, and your friends with Big Time Thinking.
Put that coffee down. Coffee's for closers only.
Without further ado, here is the founder and CEO of Big Time Advertising, Terry MacCauley.
Oh, have I got your attention now?
Buckle up. Reality starts right fucking now.
It's Big Time Thinking. We're back and at it. Welcome, my friends and family. I hope you're ready to have a kick-ass week. We got part two to our first podcast, part one, which was on people skills. We're going to jump right in. We're going to follow up with all of that I had said in the last podcast. And in case you missed it, or even if you did hear it, a quick refresher, we were talking about how important people skills are to being successful in business, family, and life, right? And that's what Big Time Thinking is about, is we want to be better at all of it, right? And it involves a lot of common sense. But if we want to develop these better people skills, on the last podcast, I started with saying that I believe 85% of career success depends on our people skills. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I also said that I think we're losing our people skills, especially this generation, as technology and our gadgets have become obnoxious. So we've got to ditch our gadgets. We've got to make it about them, about our customer, about the person we're with, not about us. If you're just waiting your turn to talk, you don't get it. You've got to make it about them. After we make it about them, we've got to give fewer speeches. And we got to ask more questions, right, to engage that customer. That's really when you start making it about them. We ask questions that engages our customer. And we're not just there to give a speech and like it's just about us, right? Everybody knows when you're giving a speech and you have an intention of what you're trying to accomplish. And then you're going to hang on to their every word. And hanging on to every word means you lean in, you nod with affirmations, you follow up with stuff they say. Every single word they say matters, even an email. And then I also talked about cleaning up our professional language. We've got to get professional language, and that means not using slang off color. For me, I've got to work at the cuss words, swear words, but we got to always be professional with our language, not just our look. And then we want to use the right tone, pace, and inflection, right? So we want to engage our customers with tone, pace, and inflection. And I shared with you in the last podcast, with different inflections and different tones, you can send very different messages. So with that being said, we're going to jump right into our second part of our people skills, a little more in depth. And these were some of my notes that I had written down when I was preparing for this, of a way to keep evolving and get better at our people skills. Let's jump right in. And I think the next evolution of our having better people skills, and these are just my random thoughts, is we've got to have an ability to relate to others. We've got to be able to relate. And there's only one way to relate. And this is hard for people. You've got to develop this well-rounded personality, okay? And I will tell you, one of the reasons I think I'm a great salesperson is, and I've had my family originally pointed out, my brother John, he's like, Terry, you've had more damn jobs than anybody I know. And as a kid, he's right? So I waited tables at Wesselman's restaurant, which is out of business. No, I didn't wait. I washed dishes. Then I had a paper route. Then I worked for a semi company and I changed tires on a semis. I worked for the Evansville Otters, an independent league baseball team, as a kid. I waited tables at Chili's. I detailed cars at Kenny Kent, Chevrolet. I worked for my dad's ad agency as a kid. I babysat all the time for many different families. Did a lot of babysitting. So babysitting with different incomes too. There's some you'd go and you wouldn't get paid hardly anything. You'd be like, Jesus, I'll never do that again. I remember I'd be so tired when I come home. Those are just some of the jobs that I worked for a radio station in college. I tended bar at a Knights of Columbus in college. I worked at a racetrack, a horse racetrack. I worked as an installer for a company called Complete Installations. We drove across the country installing dorm room furniture in dorms. That was a great summer job. So right there, do you know how many different experiences and well-rounded I became in just those? And there's more I've forgotten than I can remember. But to become well-rounded, I do think you've got to live. I think travel helps learn to relate to others, right? The Midwest gets picked on for being all family values, but the Midwest is awesome. You don't appreciate the Midwest until you go travel more, though. Going to Europe and learning about Europeans. I've been there before, and I watched an American get pissed off because he couldn't understand the foreign language. He goes, "You know what I hated? You know what I hate about Italy? So many damn foreigners over here." And I just about died laughing. Like, dude, are you like full blown idiot? So you've got to develop this ability to relate to others, and you can't relate unless sometimes you've walked in their shoes. Now, I will tell you, as an old philosopher, experience isn't necessarily knowledge. You don't have to experience something to be knowledgeable about it. But I will tell you, experiencing it does absolutely help you reinforce your knowledge, both positively or negatively. It's like the best data to reinforce the knowledge you feel you have, and that's another day, another dollar. And just real quick, if you're arguing with me that you do have to experience something to have knowledge, then I'll ask you: do you have to get ran over by a bus to know it would hurt? No. Right? I know that it would be a very unpleasant experience. All right. And I have levels of knowledge of pain. I've broken bones and yada, yada, yada. So the point is, I don't need to go get run over by a bus to know anything about it. Same in life, but the experience of it would certainly change. No question. So that's just what comes to mind real quick. But I will tell you, being able to relate to others simply means that you can agree or disagree, but with mutual respect, because you have experienced it. You understand their position. You've been there. You've done that, right? It's the difference between sympathy and empathy, right? We want to empathize because we've done it. We've experienced it. So that's I think one of my greatest people skills. When I say I can relate to others, I've said it all the time. I've had the down in the dirt, blue collar job, and respect those people, how hard they work, and the genuine draw to what they're driven to do, right? And then I've also hung out with extremely wealthy people and what they're after and what they do. And I have respect for some of the things they do. And at the end of the day, I'm not one's better than the other. They're all human beings, but I can relate to each and every single one of them. My 4 years of studying to be a priest was probably the greatest thing I ever did for my career in terms of wanting to be a salesperson, because I had to take a lot of psychology and I had to learn a lot about people. And you've heard me mention that before. I can relate to others. Been there, done that. Okay? And that's the key. And I constantly want to evolve with that. It's important. And I think it's harder as I get older too. I want to make sure I relate to these younger guys. So sometimes I got to put on the music they're listening to. And thank God I got kids. Instead of telling my kids their music sucks, they love it. So listen to it and find out why they like it. Even though down deep I think it sucks. Speaking of which, I just learned this past weekend that I guess there's a guy named Machine Gun Kelly who went off on Eminem. He had some rap my kids wanted me to hear, and he went off on Eminem, and then they played for me Eminem's response. I couldn't believe it. So indeed, I'm evolving. I don't think I can ever use that in sales, but you never know. But we constantly are trying to relate to others. And if we don't have that ability to relate to others, you've really got to consider if you're meant for sales. Same in a marriage. You got to relate to your wife, right? And the more experiences we have that we can draw upon, the better. Then we want to have strong communication skills, okay? And from here, I'm going to talk and kind of go into what I think are strong communication skills, which makes us a better people person. If we can't communicate, we don't have good people skills. And what's the goal of communication? Remember, let's not lose focus. The goal of communication is to successfully communicate what you're trying to say to someone else. I said in the last podcast, or maybe it was this one, I'm losing my mind. I can't remember which part one, part two. But the point is, we only get what someone says. We don't get what they mean. So think about that. We only get what someone says. We never get what they truly mean, but sometimes we might, okay? So that's the goal of communication. The goal of communication is not only get what they say, but get what they mean. If that happens, successful communication. So how do we develop strong communication skills so that what we are saying is conveyed and our meaning is also absorbed by our customers or our family and friends? So this is a fundamental people skill, is to be able to communicate. You've heard me talk about the importance to listen and those kinds of things. But I think these things I'm going to talk about are going to help with the ones I talked about in part one, but it will also help you articulate what you're trying to say to your customers and your friends and your family. Okay. So the first part of a good communication skills is we want to develop the ability to articulate ourselves. Okay. And this is hard for introverted people. If you're on that Myers-Briggs or your personality, if you're very introverted and you're with short words, it's hard to articulate how you're feeling. So learning to articulate is a great people skill. So the way we develop better articulation, and here are my thoughts on how we can better articulate. One, we got to be patient with others. And that's just what it means. We have to be patient. I talked about it before about not just waiting our turn to talk, but we've got to have a level head in stressful situations. Be patient. Okay? So if you're trying to collect on an invoice from a customer that's a little late, you just got to be patient. Right? If you come across as if everything's a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the house is on fire, get the hell out, and 1 being, it's okay, you got to be patient with others, right? You got to be tolerant of others. With that, you've got to have the ability to trust others. And I think this is the hardest for a lot of people. But it's one of the most key components of being a people person and having good people skills. You've got to be able to trust others. Yes, I have been sinned against and wronged by many, many people in my lifetime. I've worked my tail off for no good reason to help someone form an organization and raise almost $30,000-$40,000, and they did a lot of work too. But literally was in the trenches as most I could with raising kids, and I've been wronged by that person. But I still will always trust people and forgive them, and I'm blessed that comes easy for me, because I know it's not easy for a lot of you out there. But I want you to learn to trust people. Maybe as a child, there's a major divorce in your family and you can't trust a marriage. You've got to work at that. Okay? If you've been fired at a job early on, you can't trust your boss, you're going to have to work at that. If you've been cheated on by your own girlfriend or boyfriend, you're going to have to work at still trusting people. And I know it doesn't come easy for people and doesn't come quickly. But you cannot, I promise you, you cannot accelerate your career if you're not trustworthy. You've got to be trustworthy. Because if you're neurotic in the workplace, thinking you're always getting wronged, it will come across. And your people skills, you'll eventually be eliminated. And with it, especially with team cooperation, right? How many times you got to collaborate with people on your team, and you'll never get projects done if you can't trust them to get it done. And there's no such thing as a vacuum, guys. So you're going to have to trust people, and things are going to go wrong. And when they go wrong, you still got to trust them and know that they're dealing with a whole world of shit just like you are. We don't know. I don't know what my team did last night. I don't know. Maybe it was a great night for everybody. Maybe it was one of the most stressful nights, and maybe one of them sitting at their computer right now, stressed to high heaven over something that's very important to them, right? And very personal. Or maybe it's the greatest day of their life. But somewhere in between, I trust them. And when I'm done trusting them, they won't be employed here anymore. But I've got to learn to trust people. So with that, I think then you got to know how and when to show empathy, right? You've got to be able to place yourself in someone else's shoes, and that's a key people skill, right? Now, there's a difference between being stupid. If someone's late once here and there, I can empathize with that. Shit's happened in my life where occasionally it happens. Now, not really ever for me, but I can empathize. But if you can't place yourself in someone else's shoes, whether it's a lost one, and if you're always just turning to the HR book to solve all your problems, you're not a people person. Yeah, that's the guide. One of my favorite short stories was Billy Budd. You should read Billy Budd. I've referred to it before. We'll always refer to it. But long story, the law was Billy Budd had to be killed for what he did. Okay, I'm not getting into the whole story, but everyone reading it knows he shouldn't have been killed. Like, it was not the just thing to do, but they did it because it was the rule. Well, the rule is he had to die. And you're reading it going, well, this is a horseshit rule. It's not just. And you understood the rule to be just most of the time. So the lesson from Billy Budd was the only just law is the law which is capable of being overruled. Occasionally when it needs to be, when it makes good common sense. Okay? So the rule of thumb that you should never work with family and business is a good rule of thumb. But occasionally, if someone's your second cousin, or if you work great with your spouse and they'd be an all-star in your business, fuck that rule. Right? But the rule's there so everybody can show caution. Okay? And as business owners, and this is the toughest, especially once you become an owner or even a manager, is knowing when to show the empathy. Okay? Maybe you were wronged by $5 by a person, and you think they got to be fired immediately because they're not trustworthy. But sometimes maybe you got to get in their own shoes and find out why it's going on. And if you still draw the same conclusion, I get it, but you've got to learn to show empathy. It will give you better people skills. If you contribute to the dehumanizing of a company, both yourself and your company will have absolutely limited growth, and it will lead to death. So we've got to quit dehumanizing what we're doing. We are working with humans. This is one of my biggest pet peeves, and this is stuff I get in arguments with people, and I actually bite my tongue a lot because that's where the world's gone. Unfortunately, we can't have opinions about a lot of things, but we are dehumanizing everything, right? We're getting to where if one person's done one thing wrong their entire life, they're done. They should never get a job again. Just toss them out with the dishwater. Well, then I'm like, well, what if we treated our animals like that? Because they pooped on our floor one time after they know the rules, we just get rid of them. You'd say, no, that's terrible. Well, why are we doing that to human beings in our life if they wronged you once? Why can't we forgive? Right? Isn't that the bonds of a great friendship? I know it is. When I know if someone forgives me for wronging them, I'm like, man, that's a real friend. I need more of those. Right? But too many of us walk out when they need us the most. So in our own business, we quit trying to dehumanize it, right? You're not employing robots. And one day we're going to have robots. And the sad part is none of us are going to have jobs. So quit dehumanizing everything. Things aren't always black and white. And that's why that's why this goes hand in hand with the ability to trust others. I get it. In a perfect world, there'd be no hiccups in business. The process would always go like it is. But there are hiccups, right? That's life. It happens. And when it does, we've got to show compassion, right? Don't get on this holy higher than thou art horse where you just tell people, I don't give a shit. That's the process. You got to figure it out. No, get in the trenches with them occasionally and show some empathy. With that then, and I talked about it before, one of the keys to having great communication skills and the ability to articulate is flexibility, okay? This is different than empathy, but it's similar. But we've got to have flexibility, right? What do I mean? So being likable or having a good personality are highly contingent and context-dependent attributes, right? They are. They're important. But I will tell you, if you've got an uncle who sits at the Thanksgiving table who had no personality, and you almost thought, man, he's going to murder somebody one day, and he just has this cold personality at the Thanksgiving table, and then one day he does something he shouldn't, and is a felon, he's headed to prison, his personality is going to serve him well, right? Once he's incarcerated. Why? Because he's got to be flexible. He's going to a situation where his personality will fit it. I don't know if I'm making sense, but you've got to be flexible, right? One of my favorite movies is Clash of the Titans. Okay? Awesome movie. Some people just like it because it was a movie, but if you dive into it, why did he survive? And I don't know if you've seen the movie, but remember, he's confronted with Medusa. If you stare at Medusa, you turn to stone with all the snakes. He doesn't fall for it. He survives all these little scenarios. Why does he survive? It's because of flexibility. And it's the ability to adapt to the environment you're thrown into. That's flexibility, my friends. You got to have the ability, I'll say it again, to adapt to the environment you're thrown into. He survives in Clash of the Titans because he was not intimidated by everybody being intimidated. He's like, okay, if that's the rule, and I'll adapt to it. Okay? Same thing in business. You've got to be flexible. Another example is if I threw you into the worst neighborhood in the United States where you could get murdered, are you someone who could walk through and live? Or are you going to get killed? It's a great question. It's a scary question, but you got to have a personality capable of being flexible. And I think that's where they're well-rounded, someone who's been around in a lot of places, but you've got to be flexible in certain environments. Okay. And I think that's key. You can bend your own rules and beliefs and still be a good people person, right? So a good people person, if I walk into a gang and I'm just snooty and whatever, and I don't have the ability to relate or talk and not come across as a snob, I'm in trouble, right? I'm not a good people person. So, and those are the ultimate extremes I'm giving you, but that's the key. You've got to be flexible with people. and you've got to be able to adapt yourself to the environment you're thrown in. Then you've got to have good judgment, and I can't talk about good judgment enough. Good judgment is an absolute key people skill, and it comes from learning, listening, and observing the world around you. Right? It does. That's how you're going to have good judgment. But good judgment allows us to select our friends, our associates, determine our reactions and our responses to both people and events, and then we can make sound decisions, which is good judgment, isn't it? So we've got to have good judgment when we select our friends, right? Those we work with, our associates who we meet at the water cooler, who we take our lunches with, and we got to make sound decisions. We've got to have good judgment. And I've said this all the time, typically pay attention to that gut feeling. It often has something very valuable to tell you. That gut feeling, how many times have you guys all done this? Like, man, I should listen to my gut feeling. So we're going to have to make decisions to be a good people person. You got to make decisions about people. Yes, you want to be empathizing with them, and you want to adapt to those situations. But at the end of the day, you're still going to have to make good judgment. I have to make good judgment when I hire people. That's probably the hardest thing I have ever done, and I still am not very good at it, but I work at it. You're going to have to make good judgment. When you let someone go, you're going to have to make good judgment. And if you're not at a manager or owner level, you're going to have to make good judgment about how to prioritize projects. Is someone in the office slowing you down every time you talk to them? What are you going to do to make good judgment to make sure that doesn't happen again? But to have good people skills, you've got to have good judgment. People respect someone and go, hey, I'd love to talk to you a little bit later. I've got to knock out this project, and then we'll have time to talk later. Is that cool? Yes. I just had good people skills, and I made a decision and had good judgment. The next really crucial thing that really will help you with your people skills is you've got to have an ability to persuade others at the right time. Okay, don't confuse this with, oh, Terry, you're telling us to be an active listener and all that. Yep, you got to do that. But at some point, to articulate and be good at sales and be a good people person, you are going to have to know how to persuade others. And the best way to persuade others is once you've listened, once you've engaged, you know their personality. Now I have all their likes and wants, and it makes it easier for me to persuade people. I have been good at this my whole life. I drive my mom nuts. The guy helped me finish my basement. I'm persuading him all the time. I'm persuading my wife to do what I want all the time. And it's in business, but it's a ability to sell, but it's a people skill, my friends. Okay? So if you're up for promotion or you're pitching a project, even if you're just selling clothing in a retail store, you've got to be able to formulate strong, convincing arguments as to why they should buy from you, your product, and you're the very best, and you are the right one person. So you've got to be able to persuade others. And that's a people skill. Persuading others doesn't mean being arrogant, condescending, but it means persuading someone. Hey, I've listened to everything you've told me, and there's some great things about you. It sounds like you're a family man. This product I have is you're going to love because you are a family man. You see where I'm going? I'm drawing on stuff we've had, and now I'm transitioning into persuading someone. But you're going to have to learn to develop the ability to persuade others. It's part of having good people skills. With persuading others, then there's the next people skill, is you're going to have to develop negotiation skills. That's part of being a people person, and it's an important people skill, is the ability to negotiate. Okay, and I know some people hate negotiations because we've reserved this area that is something we can't do. But I'm telling you, we've got to develop negotiation skills. You Can Negotiate Anything by William Cohen, great book. But you've got to develop good negotiating skills. Why do you have them? Because they're beneficial in everything you do. You're going to negotiate with your spouse, your children. You're going to negotiate with their teachers. You're going to negotiate with your boss. For internal job offers, if you need to discuss your salary, you're going to learn how to negotiate. And negotiate is a give and take. Negotiating isn't just your way or the highway. It's negotiating, right? You're going to negotiate with vendors in your business. I guarantee you will. You're going to negotiate with your customers. They often require, especially in the car business, that's all we're doing is negotiating. And we can become the hero if we're successful at negotiating skills. Because that's the goal. We want to make our customers, the other person, feel like the hero, right? And you do that with developing good negotiation skills. That would make a great podcast, is the art of negotiating. But that's one of the skills that you're going to have to develop to have great people skills. You're going to have the ability to keep an open mind. You You can't be a know-it-all. Have an open mind. Be willing to respect others and listen to what they're bringing to the table. Jack Welch was great with this with the GE way. If someone had something to say and had an ability to make something better, he had this open mind and willingness to listen. I think you got to have a great sense of humor to have good people skills, right? And I mean a great sense of humor. Who doesn't enjoy laughing? Everybody likes to laugh. And I will tell you, it's the greatest diffuser of tension anytime I'm negotiating, anytime I'm trying to sell something, is humor. And I probably rely on it way too much. Again, I told you the second oldest of 7. My dad was an ex-Marine. Stuff was tense at our dinner table. I think that's where I got my great sense of humor. I knew how to break that tension with good humor. Now I understand off-color humor, not professional humor, can absolutely harm our people skills. So you've got to keep it on target and appropriate for who you're talking to. But we're going to have a great sense of humor if we're going to have good people skills. And I'm not talking about the joke teller. That's one of my biggest pet peeves of some people. They just constantly go, hey, did you hear the one about, oh, sweet Jesus, another, right? So those are people skills too, is that guy does it too much. But we're going to have a good sense of humor. And sometimes having a great sense of humor is self-deprecating humor. Can't say that enough. I'm not afraid to make fun of myself in front of a client, because if I see it, they see it. And they're like, hey, this guy doesn't think he's the cat's meow. He realizes he can always be better, and the sense of humor really, really helps diffuse those things. I want to become a proactive problem solver. That's another important part of having good people skills, right? When I reach out to my clients or my people about something that they're like, man, I'm surprised he brought that up, I'm being proactive about problem solving. I'm not letting someone just sit on something and stew. So I'm going to be proactive. If there's a problem, you know it in your gut, right? That gut feeling. Be proactive in figuring out how to solve the problem. If you just let it linger, it's only going to boil over and become much bigger of an issue than you think you got now. But we've got to become proactive at problem solving. That's part of being a well-rounded person with great people skills. You're going to have to develop leadership skills. If you want to be just a kick-ass people person, there's times you're going to lead and not be the back dog. Sometimes you're going to be the lead dog. And I promise you, and that's part of the motivating, persuading others, negotiating, that's part of having leadership skills. If you can motivate a team and help those around you to do their best work, you'll be more successful even if you're not in management, guys. You don't have to be in management to be a leader, right? My son said, well, I'm not the captain of the football team. I said, what the hell does that have to do with leading, right? On the sidelines, you can still be patting guys on the ass, giving high fives, and getting them going. That's the leader. Just because it says captain on your jersey doesn't mean you're not a leader. So you're going to need leadership skills to be a people person. And people will remember a leader. That guy was a leader. And remember, you got to be careful. Sometimes being a leader, you don't want to lead them to the wrong destination. You want to have good leadership skills. So that's why you're going to have the ability that I mentioned earlier to make good decisions. Good manners. Okay? I'm amazed how many people have bad manners. They're a good people person. Then you sit down with them, have a meal with them, and they have lousy manners. They don't open up a door. People say, oh, it's chivalrous. No, opening up a door for someone else, doesn't just have to be the opposite sex, is good manners. Do you say please? Do you say thank you every time someone does something for you? Okay? I'm amazed how many people don't say thank you. And I hope my employees, I really hope I say thank you, Lex. I feel like I do. And when I ask, I try not to tell people, say, hey, would you please do me a favor? And I'm the boss. I say, Dad, do it because no, please. I'm asking a favor. I have good manners. I was raised with good manners. If I could thank my dad for one thing and my mom for one thing they gave me in people skills, they raised us to have good manners. Please, thank you. We know what good manners are. Chewing with your mouth open. Sitting with someone who chews with their mouth open. They look like a cow chewing the cud. I want to punch them right in the nose. What lousy people skills. Chomping on gum in front of people. Bad people skills, right? Those are all manners. Eating before everybody else's food is at the table. Bad manners. If you're with clients, that could happen. And people say, oh, no, go ahead without us. I will still say, nope, no problem. I'm waiting for you, man. It's just good manners. And if you don't have good manners and you don't know what they are, Google it. But you got to have good manners. That's part of having good people skills. You could be good at all this other stuff and you have lousy managers. And that's the thing about people skills. It's just one of these things off and people can make a decision not to do business with you. Got to have good manners. And good manners is not talking over people. We've talked about that. Active listener, that's having good manners. Come on, we got to have good manners. Then the last thing I'm going to touch on is we've got to be able to be supportive of everybody around us. We got to support the team, right? People always want to believe in something. regardless of who they are. We all appreciate support and encouragement and be motivating. Those are some of the things I see in someone with really great people skills, right? They're cognitive of everything going on around them, and then they become supportive and they motivate. Even with Facebook now, we all know who our better friends are on Facebook and social and Twitter and Instagram. The ones who are always motivating and giving us supportive comments, right? So we need to do that in business as well. Employees at all levels want to be around enthusiastic people, right? I've always said enthusiasm is a force multiplier. Negativism is a force divider. Let me repeat that. Enthusiasm is a force multiplier. Negativism is a force divider. So everybody wants to be around enthusiastic people with drive and high energy. Develop the energy. Get the tone right. Go off. You can do these things. We can do these things, just as I'm saying. So I'm going to wrap it up with this, guys. I think it made for great 2 podcasts. I hope I've helped. I want you to develop great people skills. If you do these things, you will succeed in more things you do. Remember, 85% of success in your career is related to your people skills. It will take you so much further in life. So develop these people skills. That's it for this Big Time Thinking podcast. I want to thank you for listening. Guys, we're still building up every week. It seems like we're getting more and more listeners. I really could use the ratings on Facebook. I need comments. But the following's great. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud. Go to bigtimethinking.com. There's a lot there. Follow us on Facebook. We're posting on there for some engaging questions and fun stuff. But thanks for listening. Go out, have a big time week, and remember, you want to be big time every time.